Welcome to Chapter 1 of our course on British civilization. In this lesson, we'll explore Britain at the dawn of the 20th century, a time when the country stood at the height of its imperial power, yet was already facing internal and global challenges. We'll examine the foundations of that empire, the ideology behind it, its economic dependencies, and the growing unrest that would foreshadow dramatic changes ahead. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to identify and explain key characteristics of Britain's imperial and domestic landscape around 1900. We'll analyze how the empire justified its expansion, the contradictions it contained, and how both colonial subjects and British citizens responded. You'll also begin developing historical interpretation skills, especially around class conflict and the political movements, setting the stage for deeper work in future chapters. In 1900, Britain stood at the height of its global power. It ruled the largest empire in history, governing one quarter of the world's land and people. From Canada to India, from Africa to Australia, British influence spanned continents. This empire brought immense wealth and prestige. Britain's unmatched navy secured global trade routes, while raw materials and profits flowed steadily into its ports. But maintaining this dominance came at a cost. The empire relied on military control, economic extraction, and the suppression of resistance. These realities were often masked by a powerful narrative, the belief that Britain was bringing civilization to the world. In truth, the so-called civilizing mission served to justify exploitation, while reinforcing Britain's identity as a global superpower. Empire wasn't just enforced with armies, it was justified with ideas. At the turn of the 20th century, Britain claimed it had a moral duty to civilize the world. This belief was captured in Rudyard Kipling's poem The White Man's Burden, which painted empire as noble, even self-sacrificing. British leaders argued that they were bringing order, education, and progress to their colonies. But behind the rhetoric was control, economic, cultural, and political. Imperial ideology reassured British public that their empire was just. But for many colonized peoples, it meant suppression, inequality, and exploitation masked as virtue. Economically, the British Empire was the lifeblood of Britain's industrial machine. Its colonies provided vital raw materials, cotton, sugar, tea, gold, and rubber, feeding the factories of Manchester, Birmingham, and beyond. In return, the colonies became captive markets, flooded with British textiles, tools, and manufactured goods. This system allowed Britain to dominate global trade, earning it the nickname the workshop of the world. London, meanwhile, emerged as the financial capital of the empire, home to major banks, insurers, and trading firms that managed imperial wealth. But this wealth came with a cost. Britain's economic power was now deeply dependent on the empire's survival. Maintaining control over far-flung colonies wasn't just political, it was essential for business. That meant funding armies, building navies, and quelling unrest wherever it appeared. As resistance grew, so too did the pressures that came with holding an empire together. At the start of the 20th century, Britain remained a global industrial powerhouse. With its numerous factories at the start of the 20th century, Britain remained an industrial giant. Its factories powered the empire. Producing coal, steel, textile, and ships, London stood at the heart of it all, a political capital and a global financial hub. But this dominance was starting to slip. New rivals were rising fast, especially Germany and the United States. Both nations were modernizing, investing in infrastructure, and embracing technological change. As their industries expanded, they began to challenge Britain's lead in key sectors like steel, machinery, and electrical innovation. Though still strong, Britain could no longer assume unchallenged leadership. The British Empire faced growing competition, and a slow, uncertain decline had already begun. Not everyone accepted British imperial rule. Beneath the surface of global power, resistance was already brewing. One of the earliest signs came with the Indian Revolution of 1857, a widespread uprising that shook British confidence and revealed deep anger among colonized populations. Then, at the turn of the century, Britain fought the Boer War in South Africa. It was a brutal, costly conflict that challenged the empire's image of moral superiority. The war exposed the harsh realities of occupation, scorched earth tactics, concentration camps, and civilian suffering. Edwardian Britain was a deeply divided society. At the top stood the aristocracy and landed elites, still enjoying vast wealth and influence. The middle class was growing, especially professionals and merchants. But the majority of the people were working class, laboring in factories, docks, and mines under difficult conditions. Inequality was stark, and dissatisfaction was growing, setting the stage for labor mobilization. In response to poor conditions, workers began organizing. Trade unions grew quickly and started demanding fair wages, shorter hours, and better treatment. In 1900, unions and socialist groups formed the Labor Representation Committee, the forerunner to the Labour Party. It aimed to represent working class interests in parliament, eventually becoming a major political force that challenged the dominance of the conservative and liberal parties. So, at the dawn of the 20th century, Britain was a global empire at its peak, but also a society full of contradictions. Its economy powerful but vulnerable to global shifts. Its ideology portrayed empire as noble, yet its realities were exploitative and unequal. Domestically, class tensions and labor unrest signaled deeper conflicts to come, and overseas, nationalist resistance was rising. This chapter marks the end of Britain's unquestioned supremacy, and the beginning of a century defined by struggle, transformation, and decline. In the next lesson, we'll explore how the First World War shook the foundations of this empire and changed the course of British and global history.